reaping the benefits of sharing an income with someone that you would if you were married. Like, right, that's what this whole argument is premised on. So there's research, we know that that's actually not true for a lot of couples these days. So 28% of millennial couples, this is their term, not mine, say that they keep their finances separate, that they don't pool their money. This is cohabiting and married couples. This is true for 11% of Gen Xers and then 13% of baby boomers. But this actually, so this is in the US, but this fits cross-national research, is that more and more couples are increasingly keeping some money in separate accounts or doing this like partial pooling where we share some money but not all. But it's more than that, is that 1 in 5 millennials will tell you that they actually don't even know how much their spouse or partner makes. So it's not even just that they're not sharing their resources in one account, but they're operating completely independently with their finances. So I was curious to find out, what do people believe about how money should be treated within the couple unit? Like, what do people think should happen? Maybe not just what Marco Rubio tells us should happen, but like, what do people actually think? So why study attitudes? Usually I get this question with a concern that, like, why not just study behaviors? Behaviors are a little tricky for this particular topic because the person with less bargaining resources, like, we don't know what they think should happen to money, right? Like, they're, supposedly, the person who's earning more money is really what the behavior indicator is telling us. Like, they got their way, if you follow what economists would say. I don't know if that's true or not. But what I'm more concerned about is that couples generally decide on a way to share money and then they stick with it. Like, they don't really change it over the course of their relationship. This is what behavior shows us. So we don't know, so it's actually a lagging indicator of what people believe should happen to money in families. The other thing is, I come from a therapy background before I started in sociology, is that we know that people are healthier when their behaviors align with their thoughts. So if what you think should happen, what you want to do, can you actually enact that? So it's important to know both what people think should happen and then what they are doing. So for this study, I did an experimental survey of about 4,000 respondents 2 years ago. The time-sharing experiments for the social sciences fielded this survey for me. So it's nationally representative of US adults. You should definitely look them up if you are not familiar with them, because you submit an application and then and if you get it, then they send you an Excel spreadsheet with your data. You don't have to do anything else, so it's great.
So say again, what was it?
Yeah. So it's time-sharing experiments for the social scientists. And then it's publicly available data, so you can all go look and download this data and play with it if you want as well.
And it's free, right, if you win?
So it's free to you if you win. So it's kind of the researcher's dream. You submit an application and they send you your data. And you just play with it. And you get it to, like, yourself to publish with for a year privately, and then it's made available for everybody, which is fabulous. So I have about 4,000 respondents. For this paper, I'm going to focus specifically on the respondents' own characteristics. So what are the demographic differences in attitudes about what people think should happen to money? So I showed all of these 4,000 people a vignette of a couple. So one example would be Michelle and Anthony are both 31 years old. They're married. They've been a couple for 3 years. They enjoy spending time together and are happy. They have 1 child together. And although they both work about 40 hours per week, Anthony earns $2,800 a month, while Michelle earns $1,200 a month. So this is one example of many vignettes. As you might have guessed, the things that were bold and in color were my manipulations. So some people got a vignette that said the couple was married, other people got a vignette that said the couple was living together, some people got a vignette that said the couple was not a parent, others were, and so on. I'm going to focus today on just the marital and parental status, but I'm happy to talk about the earnings differential or the relationship duration of the couple and how that affected what people said. Okay. So descriptively, I then asked them, what do you think Michelle and Anthony should do with their money? Do you think they should have only a shared account, and so they're depositing all of their earnings into one account? This is kind of the traditional joint account. And about 40% of the people said, across all of the vignettes, that the couple should do that. Should they have both shared and separate accounts, this partial pooling? 44% of the sample said that. It was a much higher number than I expected. And then about 17% of the people said the couple should keep all of their earnings in separate accounts. So the results from here on, these are just the descriptors for the whole sample. I'm going to show you kind of broken down by the vignette manipulations and the respondent characteristics, and it's controlling for all of the other respondent demographics and the vignette manipulations. Okay, so when respondents got a vignette that said the couple was cohabiting and didn't have kids, about 25% of people said that couple should have only a shared account. So you can see that of the people selecting a shared account, that number increases as they got vignettes that progressively showed that they were parents or married parents. So about 50% of people said that married parents should have only joint accounts. The other side of this is not surprising. The cohabiting no kids vignette, about 31% of people said that that couple should not have any shared money, they should keep everything separate. So this worked kind of as expected. What was a little surprising is that about 44% of everyone said that regardless of the vignette, marital or parental status, the couple should do this partial pooling thing. The other thing that I found really interesting is that even for cohabiting no kids, if you add up 44 and 25, the majority of people thought that those couples should be sharing at least some money. So that's a pretty significant amount of support for integrating finances. And if you do the opposite thing for like married parents, who we might think would be like the most likely to elicit like share everything, more than 50% of people said that you should have at least some type of separate accounting. Okay, so then I was interested in this age thing, given what we know is happening in behaviors. So adjusting for all of the differences, demographic differences in people's ages, I see no difference in how old someone is on whether or not they thought that the couple should share everything. So I'm just talking about shared everything from here on out. So about 19% of 18-year-olds said that the couple should keep everything separate, and then, let me back up. This is shared and separate, and separate. So about 19% of 18-year-olds said that the couple should keep everything separate, and about 15% of 65-year-olds said the same thing. Interestingly, I didn't find a match between attitudes and behaviors by age. So the younger folks in my sample were more likely to say that this couple should share everything. About 46% of them said that, compared to only 36% kind of on the other end, 65. And the older generation was more likely to say that you should have this like partial pooling approach, which doesn't match behaviors at all. So maybe you can help me think about why I'm finding that. So I also, now I'm just looking at just the joint accounts because the kind of partial pooling and the separate you'll get to the same response. So just looking at the people who said you should share everything, married people were much more likely, they love sharing everything, to tell people to share everything. And cohabitors were more likely to say, or were the least likely to say you should share everything. And men were also more likely to say you should share everything. So it's marriage and men. But I'm really interested in kind of the social class differences because that's where we're seeing the marriage gradient. So by education, as people become more educated, they're less likely to say you should share everything. So the higher the education, you're more likely to endorse either a partial pooling arrangement or keeping everything separate, which is the opposite of what I find in kind of terms of like advantage or disadvantage in terms of income and race. So for folks who made less than $50,000 a year, only 36% of them said you should share everything. and about the same amount of people of color, so that you should share everything. So I don't have a really straightforward advantage-disadvantage story, because it's counter to education. Like, the more advantage you get education-wise, which maybe be like, I don't know, like math skills or something, I'm not sure. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So then I was curious about if there's an interaction between whether or not you got a vignette that said the couple was cohabiting and didn't have kids versus a vignette that said the couple was married and parents, what happened. And I don't see really any difference when there's not kids involved between folks who have made less than $50,000 and folks who made more than $50,000. So if you got a vignette that said the couple had no kids, these are about the same and these are about the same. But when kids were involved, people who made more money were more likely to say the couple should share everything. So you can see kind of the split here. This is again adjusting for all other demographic differences. And then when looking at race, white people love to say that couples should share everything, which matches the behavior demographics. White people are more likely to share all of their money. With the exception being cohabiting, no kids, everyone's in agreement, really, that there's not a lot of sharing going on. So a confusing story that I'm hoping you will help me work out is that respondents who were married, men, richer, and white were more supportive of sharing all financial resources, and respondents who were highly educated, older, poor, and people of color were more supportive of separate money arrangements. So there. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Okay.
So Amanda couldn't make it today, so we are open for questions and discussions.
Could you leave the summary up there?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I actually have, Betsy. This is a little bit of a better, so this is predicted joint account by all of the demographics, all on one spot.
So you said male, but then flipping it, the way I can make sense of the confusing bit, and I might be completely wrong, but so women are suspicious. So it's people who are suspicious of the reliability of men. So college-educated women, right? That's like you grew up, you're told by your mom, keep a little nest egg for yourself.
Historically, I think this is a very real phenomenon.
Yeah. So I think the different ways you might get that message as a woman, like you better have your own little pot that he can't touch.
Right.
So college-educated corresponds with exposure to second-wave feminism to some degree. So I think people got that message through feminism. I think women of color, historically the men have been imprisoned and employed and various other things. So that kind of makes, and also if you have experienced a lot of financial insecurity, you might be more of a worrier and more like, I'm gonna have this little secure thing pop my own. Anyway, that was what my mind jumped to when you said the different things that it's when the boosts of why would you want some separateness is from one source or another you've gotten this suspicion of male reliability. I don't know.
Do you want to be up there?
Or do you want to?
No, please.
Okay.
I have a couple of thoughts. Laura, first of all, I'm kind of like Jeff. I was laughing through the whole thing. I have 3 daughters. Stepdaughter's going to be 30 soon, and the other 2 are 25 and 23. And I remember, like the 25-year-old, I'm thinking, my God, when I was 25, I had a kid. I had been married a couple of years. And I just finished paying for, her college tuition, and she still lives at home with my ex-husband, and my 23-year-old texted me yesterday, can I have money for groceries? And then I'm thinking, retirement is so hard because we're supporting our children when I turned 18, left for college, the understanding was you will get a job, you'll, come up with the money you need for your expenses, and you'll be okay. You'll borrow money if you need to, and I did, and it was fine. Well then, now it's, all of that has changed. It's a whole new ball of wax, and you're supporting the kids so much longer. Sometimes because I think it's just the way that we've been socialized and that culture's changing, but part of it is a very real financial reality. I mean, a lot of millennials get maligned because they don't leave home. A lot of them can't leave home because they can't afford to leave home. And so I think it's affecting the kids on one end, but also the parents. I don't know that I'll ever retire. I may be hauled out of my office, cold, dead, 80 years old, still teaching writing class because I had to pay for my, kids for so long. And then this other, Joanna, your stuff, I'm wondering what affects our student loans, because I went to graduate school in my 40s. I have student loans. I'm going to be paying again probably until I'm in the nursing home. And a lot of us, I think, I'm divorced now, so it's not an issue, but a lot of people, I think, even if you're married, if I ever got married again, I would keep it all separate because of income contingent repayment plans, and all of that stuff is, taxes and all of that's tied up. So maybe as more of us find ourselves in that boat, people will just keep everything separate because it's easier.
Yeah, I think the retirement, so I opened my computer because I have the paper and I just wanted to make sure I was telling you. The retirement issue is really real for a lot of these families. And I don't have the historical data to know if that's a big switch for them, or if 30 years ago they would have expected to retire, but it's going to be a real problem when people want to retire and can't. And so we had 10 of the 26 families that we just had at Wave 3 had no money for retirement.
Yeah.
And they're in their mid-40s?
Yeah,
early
50s.
Yeah. There's just nothing.
And both my parents are retired. My dad's
Right.
a retired truck driver. My mom worked for the Teamsters. She's retired.
Right.
They both have a pension or whatever is going to afford it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, right, yeah. Nobody's relying on
Crazy.
pension. Yeah, no one has pensions or anything. Yeah, it's alarming. And there hasn't been that much research so there's a Sally Mae study that I know of that looked at it and saw how people were taking out of retirement. I had one mother say, they can take out loans for college because I can't take out loans for my retirement. Right? One person said that.
Right.
Everybody else was like, I'm going to take wherever I can take to help them with this.
Right.
So I think it's a real issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, Laura, I wonder if in your interviews, if the families you interviewed, well, my two boys, they're in 35 and 36, and we loaned both of them money to buy a house
Yeah.
by taking a mortgage out on
Our house. Yeah.
Yep.
And we need drinks tonight.
You and I and Jeff are going to have a drink later.
Anyway, was there any discussion with the people you interviewed about why the millennials, what is the economic conditions that are producing this dependence, and what can they do about it? For example, a few politicians have suggested collapsing student loans and forgiving student loans or rolling them into something else. So was there any discussion out of why it's happening and what we can do about it? That seemed to me like it'd be the most valuable research.
Yeah, we did ask about what they thought about kind of why there's not a lot of intricate policy knowledge or really even expectations. And we didn't talk about it specifically policy in terms of loans, but this was when the Affordable Care Act was going through. And so there was a lot of discussion about healthcare. And because we were comparing families in Canada where healthcare is different, we have a lot of questions about policy in Canada. And people, and I think this is supported in other research, people were not like, we need universal healthcare, we need, I don't think there would have been, there may have been more of a push for loan forgiveness, but there was not any kind of like, we need this. It was, the government is bad, we're being taxed too high, they're taking all of our money, we're supporting those people who, are poor and don't have the resources. There was a lot of discussion of I make too much to get any kind of help, but not enough to be able to afford to do anything, right? So I don't qualify for grants, but they expect me to pay $1,300 a month for a loan, and that's my mortgage, right? I can't do that. So there were policy discussions in that sense, but there was not this kind of, there was not this kind of like rejection of helping the kids, right? There was not like, you know what, we just can't, we're barely doing this now, it's not gonna get better, they're gonna need to figure it out. There was none of that. It was just, I think, this very societal, this expectation. And in Canada, that was not the case. So the Canadian families did not report this, the same kind of expectation that like they would help to pay for college, partly because college is financed differently in Canada, right? And so someone who was thinking about having children, it was kind of an alarming situation, right? But yeah, there was not a lot of kind of, we're gonna all get together and like, we need to, and this was Obama was president, so, you know, there wasn't kind of a lot of policy, you know, we need unions to be stronger, a little bit, but not a lot. They bought into the prominent discourse.
Money aside, children are the greatest reward.
Thank you.
I recommend it.
I have to tell you, when I started,
Money aside.
I didn't have children when I started, and one of the questions I proposed to students, because I teach social and family, was why do people have children? And my students, at the end of the semester, thought I hated children. And I was like, no, I'm just trying to get at this like idea that you have them knowing, and now we know they're not going anywhere at 18, 25, 30. A lot, and the other study I did had, you know, parents support their kids a lot, especially wealthier parents. They're putting down payments on houses, right? They're paying for rent. They're letting people do internships. And this inequality gap is really being exacerbated at this time in the life course where some families can do that and others can't.
Two questions, one for Laura and then one for both of you. You were talking about your research subjects being worried about retirement. How did that vary across the age spectrum? Did you break down that? What I'm asking is, were 25-year-olds as attitudinally anxious as 50-year-olds? Did you search for that? Or?
So